Miller Mahdeevan with 8451 here. Welcome to another episode of The Uplow'd. We're glad you're here. Each month we dig into the world of AI, thick data, machine learning, data science. We invite you to stick around and let us know what you think. Keep an open mind and stay curious.
Welcome to The Uplow'd by 8451. I'm your host, Dan O'Keefe. And on this episode, we're talking with Director of Kroger Merchandising, DSD, and Alcoholic Beverages, Mike Wessel. Welcome to The Uplow'd, Mike.
Thanks. Happy to be here.
And I want to wish you, Mike, and everyone else listening a very happy holidays. DSD and alcoholic beverages. That sounds like a party.
It absolutely is. Every single day.
Can't wait to hear more about that.
Yeah.
But first, let's talk about you, how you came to be in this role and what that role entails.
Absolutely, yeah. So I went to Miami University, was a political science and quantitative economics major. Graduated there, it seems like a long time ago, back in 2008 now.
Okay.
Which probably isn't too long for some folks out there or some listeners.
It's not too long compared to me.
Yeah.
Thanks for making me feel old. Go ahead.
Anytime. But then I've actually been in analytics ever since then, right? So we're probably at around 12 and a half years in analytics. Worked for a variety of analytics firms, did a bit of forecasting, worked a lot in a lot of the, I guess you would say, like household cleaning sort of areas for a while, and then moved into the supplier world. So worked for a manufacturer. You might have heard of them, Anheuser-Busch. They make a lot of my favorite products. So worked for them for about 2.5 years in category management with Kroger, and that's how I got exposed to Kroger and the Kroger customer data as well. And that's kind of what led me here to 8451.
Okay. So you've seen and experienced a lot of changes in the industry, obviously, right?
Over 12 years, yes.
Okay, great.
But then here, I've actually held a variety of different roles here as well. So started off working with a lot of our supplier partners. Okay. So as you think about all of the other groceries and other products that you see out there in the world that are on the shelves, worked with them to try to really maximize their space on the shelf, maximize their promotional dollars, and really meet customer needs in Kroger's stores. From there, I transferred over to the Kroger side and started working more with category managers in merchandising, spent a bit of time in HBC, and that's then kind of came over into the kind of DSD and alcohol beverage world. Okay.
And tell us more about DSD, for those who may not know, what does that stand for? Alcoholic beverages and how the two things go together, so on and so forth.
So the DSD commodities are a lot of your like cookies, crackers, snacks, soft drinks that are in there as well. Again, party categories, as you mentioned before.
Football watching kind of stuff, right?
Anything that has to do with football watching or sporting events, like these are the categories for you. And so for alcoholic beverage, it covers wine, spirits, and then also beer as well.
All right. You're a good guy to know.
I have made a fair amount of friends since coming into this role.
I'll bet. All right. I'll put my order in later. And then you also work on something called NICS.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
That is New Item Concept Screener, correct?
That is correct.
What can you tell us about that? That sounds really interesting.
Yeah, it's other than having a fantastic acronym that we have across this entire business. It's the New Item Concept Screener is a way for us to understand how good a new product might be on the shelf or how much it resonates with customers before we even put it out there on the shelf.
Interesting.
So to kind of take maybe a step back and just to kind of understand the world that a category manager lives in. They, every single time that they're going to reset the shelf or add new products on the shelf and take items off of the shelf, doing an assortment review type process, they have suppliers all across the U.S. showing them items saying like, this is an item that I think you might want to put on your shelf for this specific category. In some categories, it's hundreds of products. Close to 1,000 in some of them, right? And so a category manager is looking at all of these items and trying to select the 30 or so that they might add to the shelf.
Of those 1,000, how many can the shelves really fit?
Yeah. So sometimes we're testing as many products as the shelf can even fit too. So the decision becomes really hard because as you think about these new products, a lot of these things we don't have any information on this. They're very new, and so you're really kind of trying the product. You're looking at the packaging, and a lot of it can be subjective, right? And so what we saw was a need to really add a little bit more data or a little bit of what customers thought about these products and add that into the decision-making process. And so what NICS will do is it will show all of those items that are submitted to category managers. It will then kind of bundle them together and then show them to customers and get customers' feedback. Much bigger than a focus group. So we're talking to 500 some customers instead of focus groups tend to be around 15, 20
Right,
customers.
and they're more qualitative. Are you still talking qualitative or quantitative?
This is very, very quantitative.
Okay.
And so it's measuring and it creates absolute rankings across all of these products and scores for each of those products as well.
Okay.
Along with that, because we have such a really good base size for something like this, we're also able to take a look at geographic differences or purchasing behavior differences.
So a product may perform well in this part of the country, but that same product may not perform well wherever.
Exactly.
Even if that product never existed anywhere before.
Exactly. Okay. So we'll show it the customer. Say you've got a really nice natural and organic item that's made out of, I don't know, alternative proteins like crickets or something like that. Something really far out there for snacks. Right? Yeah. Crickets aren't actually that bad. So if you want to try some crickets, we can.
Are those on the shelf?
We can add that to your order as well. So. But it could, as you think about like the West Coast, some of those more trendier areas, a lot of trends start on the West Coast and then work their way east. You could see that customers really kind of like that sort of product out on the East Coast and gravitate towards it. And then that can tell us to put distribution of that item on the West Coast. And then as that kind of makes its way east, we can take a look at how customers are responding throughout the country to actually really understand when and how broad a distribution we should give it.
So another question I had was, how can NICS, can I call it NICS or NICS?
Call it NICS.
Okay.
Yeah, otherwise we might have to get sunglasses and do like a Miami NCIS type.
Gotcha. All right. Yep. So how can NICS help products that have never been sold before? They didn't exist on the shelf anywhere else before. You just kind of talked a little bit about that. Can you expand on that?
Yes. So it can help in a variety of ways. A lot of our, especially like very new products, and if you think of like really small startup sort of companies, this could be super useful for them because it gives you real-time feedback and customer responses on how they're reacting to your product, right? And really giving you tangible examples of either how to improve your packaging or maybe some of your messaging on the package or even a price point. It can give you some feedback around that as well. But at the same time, like if you've got a really good dynamite product and the only issue is that you're small and you haven't really built out the networks or a relationship with Kroger at this point, this can help you leapfrog in a really nice way to say like, hey, customers are seeing this. They're really liking this. Let's find a way to get it on your shelf, Kroger, and really kind of accelerate that process.
So for the actual product, what suggestions is NICS able to share with them or tell them that could help them not just get on the Kroger shelf, but enhance the product overall? Yeah,
so there's a variety of things that are really included in that. We've got open-ended feedback, which is kind of more of, you kind of talked about quantitative and qualitative.
That's more the qualitative
it's a little bit more
right?
qualitative. You can see some of the answers that or the responses that come back. But it also allows you to really understand what customer is really liking the idea of this product.
Okay.
So if you think about maybe a product over-indexes with digitally engaged households, maybe it over-indexes with a specific age group, this process can actually give you your target audience. And then when you go to putting that item on the shelf, marketing it, advertising it, promoting it, you're able to really easily say, this is how I'm going to promote, this is the strategy behind my promotions and the audience that I'm going to target based off of the feedback that you get within the group.
Okay. That's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
And of course, it can help products that are already selling, right? But perhaps in limited distribution?
Yeah, so we would concentrate more on products that are in limited distribution.
Okay.
So going back to like the East Coast, West Coast type thing, if you've got a product that's selling really well on the West Coast, we want to give it a shot, kind of moving across the country. This could be a really good precursor to say, how is it doing in the heartland? How's it doing on the East Coast? How do we do we kind of jump coasts and kind of put it on the East Coast and see how it does there? But really kind of setting an item up for success as it expands into other distributions as well.
So earlier you touched on this, but can you apply a percentage of the products that you review that actually make it to the shelf?
It really depends on the category. And so, for example, you will have categories that they're going through just a ton of innovation. Natural foods bag snacks is a really good one that we have just a ton of new items coming out. There's a ton of submissions. That category in general is just changing so fast that there's more innovation that we want to keep adding to the shelf. And just to stay on top of trends, that's the right thing to do. You have other categories, and I don't necessarily want to pick on a category, but you think of like a lot of the center store, maybe canned vegetable type aisles. There's not a ton of new type of vegetables that are coming out. They're being added to the shelf. There might be some different packaging. There's definitely some innovation and good innovation in those areas, but there's just not the quantity of innovation that's coming through the pipeline on something like that. And so you tend to see fewer items maybe added to the shelf on more of the advanced or established categories. Whereas some of the more newer, developing, higher innovation categories, you tend to see a lot more of.
Gotcha. Okay. And then how does NICS affect the supply chain?
Yeah. So that's a really good question. I'm glad you asked it. Because as you think about those two different, especially those categories that have a lot of innovation, what's happening is those categories are kind of growing up right before your eyes. And so customers tend to be a little less familiar with some of those on-trend categories. Certainly a few customers will be really and kind of in tune and up to speed with that. Others, not so much. And so when you think about the NICS score and what that will do for the supply chain is it actually becomes a really good predictor, particularly in those categories where there's a ton of innovation. And so I'll take the natural foods bag snacks example again. As we ran a lot of our correlations for the launches, the launches they went out there, right? And then they got to the shelf. We looked back and said, how predictive was the NICS score to success on the shelf in terms of like how many they're going to sell?
Of each product?
Of each individual product that we added, that we tested. It was the number 2 most important variable.
Regardless of category?
For the natural foods bag snacks one in particular. The number 2 most important factor next to distribution. So it had to be in distribution first, which is kind of obvious. And the second one was how good was the NICS score. And so if you translate that to supply chain, it really helps us predict how much you're going to sell. And so if you've got a dynamite product and you know it's going to be a dynamite product because you've tested it through us, it allows you to produce a fair bit more, get that supply chain stocked up because you know it's going to fly off the shelf.
And so many young products suffer right at the point of distribution, right? So this can help them solve that early in the process, right?
Especially those really good ones that you put them on the shelf and they start flying off the shelf. You get items that start to go on allocation because they just can't produce enough of the item to fulfill the needs of the customers.
So does that also now enable Kroger to help those products they've identified as potential superstars? Absolutely.
It can help with that, but it also helps Kroger kind of get behind a product too. So if you see a good product that gets tested, Kroger can then say, like, we think you've got a good product on our hands. Good potential. We want to really get behind it. And how can we really showcase this item through the launch, through distribution, through some of our discoveries capabilities as well, to support this item really, really well and really just kind of accelerate it in stores and get it in the hands of those customers.
That's fantastic. So let's go a little deeper now. So how does, let's say, machine learning and data science in general give NICS an advantage?
Yeah, so we're using a lot of the machine learning to develop our forecasting algorithms and really get us to a spot where, as you think about the supply chain and what we think we're going to sell, really get us in a good spot where we feel confident that the amount of items that are going to be sold is going to sell more than what we're taking off the shelf, right? So in order to make room on the shelf to put items there, you've got to take some out. we know how those items are doing because we have the data on it.
Right.
This will tell us how well we're going to do with those new items going out there. Machine learning is great because you can retrain the model over time. And so as we continue to test NICS, what might happen is with changes out in the marketplace, that'll change the interpretation of our NICS scores.
Okay.
Either up, either down. It'll still correlate really well, we feel like. But how the degree and how it actually translates could change just based off of market.
So you'll
factors.
be able to evolve and learn just as much as you're helping those products evolve.
Yeah. So every
right?
6 months we can retrain the model, and that gets us to a really good spot where we're always improving and always keeping that model up to speed. And so it has the supply chain implication. It also has making sure we have the best products on the shelf, a good implication in there as well.
So for the future, now and for the future, what implications does NICS have for smaller companies just in general?
Yeah, this was, and when we started down this path, we didn't necessarily think this was going to be kind of a natural outcome, but this is where I think we're getting really excited in terms of what NICS might be able to do. And if you think about a category manager, or even from the point of view of a small supplier, and you're able to test with us and you see that the item is going to perform really well. But from a supply perspective, there's just no way that you can supply or fulfill the needs of Kroger. What that might help is as you think about companies going public or getting some just people getting equity stakes and helping them accelerate that.
Right.
The manufacturing capabilities. It really provides a really nice avenue for investors to invest in your company, be able to raise that capital, and then get to scale a lot faster than where it is before. So where you might see a bit of a grind in order to get it to a spot where you can serve a customer like Kroger, this can help accelerate that kind of much faster.
Helps get rid of some of that trial and error, and move the process along.
I would say so, or even like a lot of venture capitalists probably it's kind of nerve-wracking to put a lot of money into an item that isn't necessarily selling
very
a
risky,
wide spot. So if you know there's a big retailer that's interested and all that's missing is the manufacturing capability, it becomes a lot easier to kind of make that bet.
That's great. Okay. Well, we appreciate that. Before we round out the conversation, there's one more thing I want to ask you about. And we've mentioned this in a previous episode. Earlier in the year, 8451 announced the launch of its new analytics platform, Stratum, right? How does NICS ladder up into Stratum?
Yeah, so Stratum is a pretty fantastic tool around the measurement of new items. Okay. So if you think of the life cycle, we are upstream, right? So before an item kind of comes on the shelf. Stratum then is a really good capability to then understand and measure that new item and how well it's doing. So if you think of things like trial and repeat rates, what percentage of customers are trying, how many are coming back and buying again, right? And then at the same time, how incremental is this item? And so to kind of go back to my Albev world, or really any category, if you're putting another variety or another size of a same sort of product on the shelf, maybe that's bringing in new customers, but maybe it's not. And Stratum gives you the ability to really get a good measurement on the incrementality, which is kind of a made-up word, but we throw it around a lot here.
Sounds good.
How incremental are the sales of this item as we add it to the shelf? And then also where, if it is sourcing from other items, what other products is it sourcing from?
Gotcha.
And so it helps with the incremental piece. It helps with measuring the sales. But this is, like NICS is kind of more of an upstream piece. Stratum is more of a downstream piece.
Gotcha.
And the other piece that we're really trying to build in here to try and really have a really holistic launch approach is as we think about capabilities through that really 8451 has through, and I think Prism is what we're calling
we've talked about Prism in the past as well.
NICS can play in the Prism too, because as you figure out what items you're going to launch, you run it through NICS, then all of a sudden it goes to a spot where it's like, okay, we were going to launch it. What activations, what can we do through the Prism system to then make sure that it's supported out on the shelf? And then you measure it out on the back end. So you go from insight and knowing what items to launch, what items to take off the shelf to make room for it, to activation and then to measurement on the back end. And so you've got like a holistic approach
to
new items from beginning to end.
8451 has all those bases covered, right? In vetting that new product and their viability, right?
Yep.
That's great. All right. That's impressive stuff. I appreciate that, Mike.
Yeah, it's been a really exciting project.
I can tell.
And it's just been a lot of fun. And we always are uncovering different ways where it connects into the business and can really it's just amazing how many different teams across this building that this capability can actually influence and help improve. Like we've linked in the science team, we've linked in Prism, Stratum. Like it really connects into a lot of spaces, and we're excited about the potential and the runway that this has moving forward.
And it sounds like a long runway. That's fantastic.
There's a fair amount of work that still needs to be done.
That's great. That's great. Well, now that we've talked about the important stuff, it's time for the more important stuff.
Okay.
The 8451 lightning round.
Yeah, I've heard about the lightning round.
You've heard it. It's now infamous, I think. Right?
Yes, I think it is.
But you can handle it. I think you can handle it.
I hope so.
We ask you a series of 8 random questions for 51 seconds.
Oh, for 51 seconds.
For 51 seconds.
400.
See what I did there?
I got it.
Mike, are you ready?
Ready as I'll ever be. Let's go for it.
Let's go. What is the biggest surprise you ever had?
I would say Nerf guns for Christmas for my wife.
That is awesome. If you had to name one role model, who would it be?
I really like Lincoln.
Okay.
Yep.
Who is the better band, Beatles or Rolling Stones?
Rolling Stones all the way.
All right, I agree. Do you prefer the city or the suburbs?
I would say the country, but if I have to pick, the suburbs.
All right. We'll
like the mountains.
On that. What is the biggest challenge you've overcome?
Actually, getting NICS off the ground would probably be one of the bigger challenges.
That's great. Congrats. What is your favorite book?
The Count of Monte Cristo.
Great. If someone wrote a book about your career, what would be its title?
What hard work can get you.
What is your favorite way to pass time?
I really like landscaping, and maybe that's a crazy
hard work,
thing to say.
Right? Yeah.
But there's nothing like working on a nice garden and then seeing the progress at the end of the day.
Fantastic. All right, do we make it out there? We did not quite make it. Dang. Next time. We'll have you back on to talk about where all that's going, right?
All right.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Mike. We appreciate it. Thanks to Mike Wessel for being our guest today. I'm your host, Dan O'Keefe, and we will see you next time on The Upload.
Millen here. That's it for this month's episode of The Upload. We hope you enjoyed it and hopefully learned something new. Remember to give us a like and share your feedback. Until next month, stay curious.